Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual event, Tech Talk. Get started with Invoice Capture for Dynamics 365 Finance. My name's Jill, and I'll be your moderator today. We're broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, which means when you join this event, your name, email address, and phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the Q&A panel. By joining, you are agreeing to this experience. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within the upcoming weeks. If you have any questions for our presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to questions throughout and at the end of the session. Thank you so much for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Rain Zhu, Senior Program Manager. Rain, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Rain Zhou. Before we start the session, let's have a short introduction of the presenters. So I'm Rain Zhou. I'm the Senior Product Manager from Dynamics 365, which is responsible for the finance accounts payable module. So I let Severin to make a short introduction.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Severin. I'm working as Senior Solution Architect within the Faster program. Happy to be here and happy to talk about how to get started with Invoice Capture. I will take care about the demo, and I will take care about to help you to understand how this feature is helping our accounts payable invoice process. Thank you. Speak to you soon. Kevin?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Kevin Giardini. I'm a Senior Program Manager here at Microsoft. And today I'll be discussing the deployment and configuration specifically around the public preview of the Invoice Capture.
All right, great. And then Rain, up to you. Take it away, please.
Yeah, so let's start. So first, let's check the agenda today. So firstly, I will give some introduction about the Invoice Capture. And the next, we will have a very nice demo to show the procure-to-pay process. And the next, Severin will introduce some detail about the AP invoice processing. And the next, Kevin will introduce some deployment and configuration setting process. And after that, I will give some introduction about our short-term roadmap by the GA and our long-term roadmap. And then next, we will have the Q&A session. So first, let's have a check. Oh, what's the invoice capture? Yeah. Before we dive into the invoice capture topic, I would like to introduce our vision first. Our vision is to provide the end-to-end accounts payable invoice automation for the companies in different industries. This includes the step of invoice capture, prepayment application, product receipt matching, invoice validation, workflow submission, invoice posting, and invoice payment. The vendor invoice automation can relieve AP clerks from time-consuming daily work and help them to focus on more strategic tasks. Ideally, we'd expect the automation can handle most of the incoming invoices. However, sometimes there are still some exceptions happen in each step of the automation. And then it requires AP clerks manual intervention to do the review and the correction. In our roadmap, we will provide a new workspace for the AP clerks to centrally handle these invoice processing exceptions. For example, check the invoice status and do the error handling with the detailed errors messages, and do the collaboration. For example, to check the purchase order with the purchase manager for the PO invoice, and also do better like approval or reject in the workflow. So this ensures all the invoices can be processed in time and accurate via our solution. Back to today's topic, invoice capture, why we needed it and what's the value it will bring. Let's jump to that. Today, AP clerks are facing different challenges in their daily work. One main challenge is that they are receiving a lot of invoicing coming from different channels. They need to make sure all these invoices are captured and entry into the ERP system on time and without error. Invoice capture can perfectly solve this problem and bring a series of the benefits. First, it is integrated with our existing automation feature and provides an end-to-end vendor invoice automation solution as an outbox. Second, it accelerates the process to convert the paper invoice into open transaction in the system. This can help AP clerks better schedule the payment to gain more cash discount, for example. It can also relieve AP clerks from cumbersome manual tasks and let them focus on more like critical financial tasks. And it will digitize the invoice document instead of keeping the paper invoice to save the cabinet cost. Yeah, these are the benefits which will bring by the invoice capture. Now, let's have a look at the key capabilities provided by the invoice capture. First, with our guidance, customer can start to use our solution by following the step 1, 2, 3. This guidance ensures that people without any technical background can complete the installation and start to use our solution. The detailed steps will be introduced in the latest slides by Kevin. And by leveraging the Power Automate, the invoice can be extracted from different connectors. In our solution, we provide a convenient way to let a system admin to do such kind of setup. There is also a modern user interface introduced in our solution, so-called side-by-side view, which has the original invoice document on the left side and the invoice data on the right side. This helps AP clerk to review the invoice and do the correction in a more efficient manner. And as I introduced before, our solution is a seamless integrated into Dynamics 365 Finance with very less configuration steps before real usage for these functions. And our solution is empowered by the AI Builder and the Azure Form Recognizer. The pre-built model is provided to recognize the most common invoice all over the world. It then avoided the additional training effort for the system admin or the AI maker. A flexible business rule engine is also introduced that customer can tailor their own validation and the derivation rules to fulfill their own business requirement. This can make the invoice process more touchless and more accurate. So in public preview or by the GA version, the invoice capture is still targeting as an OCR service. It is an out-of-box solution with a minimal setup and configuration, and it is seamlessly connected to the Dynamics 365. And we are leveraging the different components from the Power Platform, such as the Power Automate, AI Builder, Dataverse, and most invoice can be recognized and transferred automatically via this solution. Now, let's have a deep dive into the functions which has been already ready in the current preview version. Basically, in the invoice capture, the invoices processing could be categorized into 3 phases. During the setup phase, based on company's specific requirement, system admin will define the channels of different connections. Then under the hook, it will create and activate the Power Automate flow. This flow will monitor and extract the invoice document from different channels. We do support the Outlook, OneDrive, SharePoint in our solution. But technically, we support all kinds of the flow defined in the Power Automate. Meanwhile, we also support a straightforward way that the AP clerk can direct upload the invoice document in our application. Once the channel is set up, then the system is ready to receive the invoice from the vendors. So when the invoice is sent either via the email or uploaded in the OneDrive or put in the SharePoint, it will be automatically detected by the flow and persist in the Dataverse. The manager received the file will then centrally monitor the processing status of the invoice document. Here, we also introduce a configurable file filtering that allow user to do proper setup to filter out the non-invoice document by document size, name, and format. Once the document is passing through such a validation, it will call the AI builder to do the OCR recognition. The result will be returned and mapped to our invoice data structure and persist in the capture invoice staging phase. In this phase, it contains the most complex logic. One major task is to derive the entity values automatically by the configuration of the mapping rules. For example, the legal entity, vendor account item, or the procurement category. This ensures the invoice is complete enough and can be generated in the pending vendor invoice in Dynamics 365. We also introduced the PO derivation that once the invoice header contains the PO number, it will automatically derive the PO number and the line number for the invoice lines. It ensures that the PO invoice could be the PO invoice automation, such as the product receipt matching and the 3-way matching, could be executed in the F&O. However, not all the invoices can be processed automatically. There are still some exceptions. For example, when the resolution of the invoice document is quite low or the document layout is very complex, then AP clerk needed to double confirm on the values because the recognition service cannot give a confident result for such case. So when this is happen, the side-by-side view is provided in our solution to help AP clerk to review the invoice and do the correction and in an efficient way. Yeah. Once the invoice is complete, by clicking the transfer invoice button, the invoice will then transfer from the invoice capture to Dynamics 365. Depending on the invoice entry will be generated and the continuous automation batch job will be executed. Additionally, the original invoice document could be transferred as an attachment based on the configuration group setup. So these are all the functions which has been introduced in the current version. Recently, we also introduced a feature so-called continuous learning in the latest public preview version. Here I marked the version number. Why we introduced this feature? Normally in the real business, the layout and the information such as the company name, address are fixed on the invoice if these invoices are coming from the same vendor. So when the first invoice comes, AP clerk needed to follow the manual step to assign the entities if there is no mapping rule maintained in the invoice capture. So after review, the invoice is transferred into F&O successfully. Then system knows such combination between the invoice context and the entities. So then when the second invoice comes from the same vendor, it will automatically derive these entities and the invoice can be automatically transferred. This can avoid the maintenance effort for the mapping rules, which we received a lot of feedback on this. Meanwhile, a lot of customers also inquire about the performance of our solution in the past. So we did some testing and have the following performance results. In summary, we could handle like 50 invoices concurrently, and each invoice will take 15 to 30 seconds for the touchless processing from capture to transfer. But the results can be affected by the system hardware or the complexity of the invoice, such as the number of the pages or the number of the invoice lines, and so on. So this result is just a reference for you. Yeah. Meanwhile, there are also quite some questions asked by the customer before, and we collect and list the most common ones here. First is what are the languages that are covered in our solution. So by GA version or even in the current version, we are supported the Dutch, English, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish, these languages. And we will have more languages supported in the wave 2 next year. But we don't have like we don't have the list of the supported language because this will be decided based on the marketing demand and the feedbacks. And the next is also a very frequent question asked by the customer. What's the price? So ideally, we would like to provide a very competitive pricing model compared with our ISV solutions. So that's why it took quite a longer time for such a discussion. And by now, it's in the final phase. Yeah, final discussion. And once the decision is made, I will do the announcement in our Yammer group. The Yammer group link will be provided later, yeah, in the slide deck. So the price model will be simply is some hundred amount of dollar and per thousand invoice per tenant and per month, something like that. And from the function perspective, a lot of customers ask about whether our solution are supported the non-PO invoices. The answer is yes, but we support the non-PO invoice in vendor invoice with the lines of service, item, or procurement category, not the invoice journal. So maybe the customer will ask whether we support the invoice journal. So the invoice journal is always on our roadmap, but due to the technical complexity and the capacity reasons, it's mostly not available in the GA version. Yeah, but we will continue working on that. So
All right.
Right now, okay.
Are we good? Ryan, anything to add, or can we go ahead?
No, yeah, Severin, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this was a great introduction into Invoice Capture and what kind of capabilities we are going to deliver for you, and what features we have in public preview available. So with that, I will go run a demo for you that you do know and to see, how it's helping you within your day in and day out operations.
Inga, the purchasing manager of Contoso, ordered some sound equipment from Fabricam Electronics. Meanwhile, the equipment needs to be installed by some specialist. She created 2 purchase orders in the system, one with the sound equipment and the other with the service items. Fabricam Electronics confirmed the purchases and delivered the goods immediately. Sammy, the shipping and receiving manager, confirmed the goods have been received and logged the receipt entries into the system. Meanwhile, Fabricam Electronics also sent the specialist to install the sound equipment. After the product receipt is confirmed, Fabricam Electronics sent the first invoice via email and the second one via SharePoint when the installation was completed. April, the AP clerk from Contoso, needs to check and process the incoming invoices. Let's see how she works in Invoice Capture and Dynamics 365 Finance. When the invoice arrives at the company's inbox, what happens under the hood is that the invoice document will be picked up by an automatic flow and feed it into an industry-leading AI model for recognition, which is developed by Microsoft. In Invoice Capture, April can first check the received invoice documents under My Work, Received Files. As shown at the top of the list, 2 invoice documents are well received. The value in the field Import Channel Type indicates that one of them is from email and the other one is from the SharePoint file system. The state tells that the invoice documents are successfully recognized and the captured invoice are successfully generated. If April goes into the detailed page of the received file, she can see a navigation button called View Captured Invoice in the Action panel. By clicking this button, it then redirects April to the detailed side-by-side viewer for checking detailed content of the invoice. The side-by-side viewer lets users have the original document and the invoice document open side-by-side in the same window. The viewer builds the connection between the invoice fields and the original invoice document. By clicking the eye icon, it will automatically position to the right place on the invoice document. This will help April correct the invoice more efficiently and accurately. The key fields such as legal entity, vendor account, item number, and expense type will be automatically derived based on the current setup of mapping rules or derivation rules. For PO invoices, the PO number is extracted from the invoice document. The purchase order number and the purchase order line number on the invoice lines are then automatically derived. This can ensure the success generation of pending vendor invoice in Dynamics 365 Finance. The message panel provides a great starting point for April to review the invoices. Although most invoices can be processed in a fully automated fashion, the warning and error messages can help April be aware of the exceptional cases and make corrections. Now, April can start her review correct the error, complete review, and then transfer the invoice by clicking the Transfer Invoice button. The notification message shows the pending vendor invoice is now generated successfully in Dynamics 365 Finance. She can then repeat the same steps to ensure the second invoice is also transferred. If no error is found, the invoice can be automatically transferred without any manual intervention. Now, April opens Dynamics 365 Finance System and goes to the pending vendor invoice list page in the Accounts Payable module. The list shows that the pending vendor invoices are successfully created from Invoice Capture. By clicking the View Automation History button, April can view the status from the automation history. The status shows that the first invoice has succeeded in automatic prepayment application, automatic product receipt matching, and automatic workflow submission. The invoice is then routed to April for approval according to the settings in the workflow. By clicking the Approval button in the Workflow dropdown, April approves the invoice. The invoice is then automatically posted. By repeating the same steps, April approves the second invoice as well. When both invoices are posted, the open transactions can be found in the Open Vendor Transactions under the paths Accounts Payable, All Vendors, select the specific vendor, Transactions, and then Open Transactions. In Dynamics 365 Finance, the payment proposal automation jobs help to create the payment journal automatically with payment proposal. After the scheduled job is executed, April can go to the vendor payment journal and check the details in the latest entry. The payment journal entries have been created automatically. By clicking the tab Settle Transactions on each line, it shows that this open transaction has been marked for settlement. This saves a lot of effort for April to create payment entries manually.
All right, this was a great demo to understand our procure-to-pay process. With the next section, let me double click on what specific steps we saw in the demo with further description. So if you take a look to the accounts payable team, right, Sasha, our AP clerk, is handling vendor invoices day in and day out. So the typical flow we see in the market is, vendor sends invoice by email, right? The invoice is automatically getting picked up by Invoice Capture and is transferring that invoice automatically, in best case with no touch, into Dynamics 365 Finance as pending invoice. With our vendor invoice automation, the invoice goes directly into the workflows and into the posting state. As soon as the invoice is posted, the vendor automation payment run will pick up those vendor invoices which are available to be posted, to be paid, sorry, and triggering the payment proposals. Okay, let's take a look into each step. So this is a typical invoice you might receive from your vendors. So there might be a handwritten invoice, there might be a PDF file, there might be a JPEG. There are attachments within the email, and those kind of emails can be read and can be consumed by our solution. Invoice Capture is automatically receiving those invoices. If you have learned, we have flows running and triggering and monitoring the inboxes. So there's invoices getting automatically sent to Invoice Capture solution. As a next step, in case there's some review needed because touchless wasn't successful, the Sasha, the AP clerk, can go and review the invoice and can compare, what data are missing, what data might be recognized in the wrong way. So we can do some adjustments. Soon we're done, and Sasha saying, yep, I'm ready with my review. We can go and complete the review, and she can go and click on transfer the invoice. We can go and watch the status, get switching, and once everything is done, the invoice will mark as complete. During the day or during months end, or whenever we are interested in to understand how many invoices we have received, what our top customers, we have dashboards available which can be used to understand our vendor invoices. These views can be adjusted based on purpose. So, as I mentioned, the invoices arrives in Dynamics 365 Finance in the pending invoice list. So me, as an accounts payable clerk, or in our example, Sasha, is using the vendor invoice automation workspace to open the pending invoices. So with our vendor information, those invoices you will see are automatically matched to the relevant PO number. So Invoice Capture is able to read and detect the purchase order numbers, is able to understand and to read the legal entity, and as soon as we define the legal entity, which is in the invoice header, we define the purchase number, we can go and map invoice to purchase order, and we see the PO and the receipt is automatically linked, which is great. The invoice automation is getting triggered, and as soon as everything is well, the invoice gets posted automatically. If you configure a workflow, this workflow will get started so you can review before the invoice gets posted finally. So we do see for sure, if there was a history of workflows, we see an audit trail of what happened with that invoice. After the invoice is posted and is ready to be paid, the automated vendor payment proposal, by the way, that's a feature we invented and we shipped last year. We can define our payment schedule for vendor invoices. So this schedule will help us to automatically generate the vendor invoice payment proposals. We can go and review, and we can go and approve, and we can go and post this vendor invoice payment proposal. And with that, we do have our end-to-end scenario covered, how accounts payable invoices, can be really supported by our great tools available. All right, and with that, I will hand over to Kevin to take a look. What is, the steps you need to take if you like to go and deploy and configure the public preview version of Invoice Capture. Kevin, take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you, Severin. So as we go into this deployment and configuration, please keep note that this is specific to the public preview version of the Invoice Capture tool. So with the GA release, we do plan to simplify and reduce the amount of setup and configuration that's required as part of the GA release. So there are some additional steps as part of this public preview that we'll cover here that we don't anticipate as being part of the GA. So who is going to need to set this up? So you're going to need your admin from D365, the admin from Azure, and your Power Apps admin. There's going to be configuration in each of these areas that's required to make the connection from the Power App into D365. So starting with Azure. So as a prerequisite, you will need to configure and register the Azure app in the Azure portal. So your Azure admin will need to sign into the Azure portal and register the web application, and please make sure that they make a note of the application, the client secret, and the tenant ID. All of these will be used in a later step in terms of making the connection. And the client secret is actually hidden once you've completed this step. So if you don't make a note of it at this time, you'll have to go in and reconfigure so that you can get a note of what the client secret is at that time. From an installation perspective, you're going to go in and you'll actually be able to download the preview version of the Invoice Capture app. You will need to sign into the app source store to get this, and it will navigate and download the public preview of the Invoice Capture. This does take about 10 to 20 minutes for the installation, and this will add the app into your Power Apps admin center. So next, we're going to go ahead and make the connection from the app. So from the Power Apps admin center, you're going to go in and you're going to find the solution that you just installed. So you'll be able to, you'll also need to import the installation tools that are downloaded from the Microsoft Learn page that documents this as well. We'll share that link as part of this at the same time. So once you've imported that, you'll have the installation tools, and you'll go ahead and run through the installation tools, and this will create the connection. You will need to run the flow to create the connection that is part of this app. And this is where you'll utilize the URL, the tenant ID, the client ID, and the client secret that we noted during the Azure app registration. This will also create the connection to Outlook and Dataverse. You do need to set up both of these connections at the same time, as they are both a required connection for this setup. From there, we can move into configuration. So as previously noted, the Power App does, and the Invoice Capture solution does connect to Microsoft Outlook, both 365 and standard, SharePoint, OneDrive. But you'll be able to go in and you're going to have to set up your channels. So you'll go to the Power App, select the environment that you're looking for, and select one of the connectors and create that connection reference so that you can start importing and picking up the invoice files. Next, you'll create configuration groups. And these configuration groups are where you'll be able to create different configurations for different requirements. And these will be associated with different legal entities. The same configuration group can be used for multiple legal entities, but you can have different configuration groups for each legal entity depending on your vendors, items, everything else. So next up from the app, you will need to come in and manage your legal entities. You'll need to sync.
I think we lost your audio. Can you please check?
Is that better?
No, we can't.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me all right now, Severin?
Yes, I can hear you again. Maybe it was me.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yep. Sorry
Okay,
about that, everyone. Not sure what happened there. So from here, you'll go ahead and manage your legal entities. You'll sync them. And then from there, you'll also be able to associate the configuration group with each legal entity. You also need to manage your file filters. So what your file filters will do is you'll set up your maximum size, what type of files. So JPEG, TIFF, PDF are all accessible. And also file name filters, so that the solution knows what files to pick up, whether it contains a specific text string, starts with, ends with, or if there's a specific text string that you know you want to exclude in terms of invoices or files to be imported as an invoice. Then we'll manage our mapping rules. And this is where you'll set up the vendor names to your vendor IDs in D365, what company the invoice is addressed to, so the system can identify and say, in the example in the screenshot here, The company is addressed to Contoso USA. So the app knows to utilize the USMF legal entity from D365 for the import. This also includes your items and your expense types and other mappings in terms of the information captured from the OCR and the invoice and what will be imported into D365. And with that, I will hand it back over to Rain, and he will discuss the roadmap and moving forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin. Yeah. So next I will discuss about our roadmap. First is I will introduce a little bit about our ongoing work until the GA version. Basically, we are still continuously working on the new features and some enhancement for the existing features. So here are some highlight tasks which we are currently working on. And the first is, as Kevin mentioned before, we are working on easy installation experience by the GA version using the LCS add-on. So the next is that we are trying to introduce this customer preview model by the GA version. So this by training this model, it can do better recognition on some a specific invoice. Yeah, for example, very complex layout of the invoice that the preview model cannot be handled. And the next is we used to have some customer feedback that they don't know what the error happens when the invoicing processing got some errors. So we will introduce this file processing log and the invoice activity log to show the detailed log to the AP clerks. So they know what's the error behind, and then they can take the corresponding actions for the next. And meanwhile, we are also continuously try to improve the performance, and some especially in the side-by-side view, we want to improve some user experience as well. Because here is the most manual action will be performed. The next is that we are trying to introduce a microservice. And as you can see, we are transfer the invoice from the invoice capture to the Dynamics 365 one by one. And once this microservice is introduced, this invoice which has been completely reviewed could be transferred via a batch job. So this will have a better performance, yeah, by introducing this microservice. And the next is that we also I saw a lot of questions also in the chat regarding about the charges. Yes, this is under development. Yeah, we are going to extract the charges from the invoice document and then transfer them as well to the Dynamics 365. Yeah, this is also by GA version will be ready. And the milestone date is that you can see the public preview date is already passed. It's October 2022, so it's already past time. So the version is ready. If you have interest, you can direct install and have a try. And we'd like to get your feedbacks and to see whether we could do some improvement before the GA version. And the GA is planned in the wave 1 to 2023. Yeah. So I would like to ask you if you have any questions, just raise it to us. If there are any function gaps, just contact me. Yeah, we'd like to try to do our best to solve the issues before, if it's possible, before GA version. Yeah.
Maybe Rain to add here. So for those of you who are not clear about the release wave 1 2023, so the typical release wave 1 is starting in April and it's ending in end of September.
Yeah.
So this is our wave.
Yeah.
And the wave 2 is starting then from October 2023 to March 2024. So those are our release waves we are going to ship, and we try to do our best, to ship our feature within that, release wave announced. And we do carefully monitor the public preview feedback we are receiving. So therefore, it's very important that we do have, you customers and partners go join, go try out, and share feedback, that we can decide, when it's the right timing to go GA. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will go to the next slide, Brent.
Yeah, thank you, Severin. Yeah. So let's look at our long-term roadmap. So basically, we'd like to bring more functions and granular to convert this invoice capture not only OCR service solution, but invoice management solution. So by that time, OCR just a small portion in that solution, and meanwhile, we are not only support do connect to the Dynamics 365. We are also trying to make the service could be connected to other ERP systems, like the most common one, like SAP or Oracle. Yeah. So this is our long-term strategy. Still need a lot of work to be done. Yeah. I think that's all for the introduction part. Yeah. So we come to the Q&A part.
Wonderful. Thank you. Joe, just briefly, we heard and we see that there are some people facing audio issues and having issues to join the event. So we are super sorry that there's something, wrong with the configuration of the meeting. We are aware, we go figure out what is the reason for that. And if needed, we try our best to get a next session within this time zone scheduled. The recording will be available, 5 days after the event. So you can share this recording with your colleagues, with your coworkers, whoever wasn't able to join. This is super sorry to hear. We do our best to troubleshoot, to mitigate, and if we feel it's needed, then we will put a third, session into the calendar. So, stay tuned, and we will keep you posted. All right. So next to this technical thing, let's have a look to the questions we see here in the Q&A panel. Kevin, would you like to point out one important question you see? I'm just taking a look to this poll at the moment. So I think one question which we see, the question is, do we need to have a third party's, OCR solution? So Rain, would you like to highlight, what specific OCR, capabilities we ship within Invoice Capture?
So Severin, can you just repeat? Yeah, I was watching the other question. Sorry.
Yeah. So the question is here, if customers, which likes to explore Invoice Capture, if they need to get a third-party OCR solution for as a prerequisite for using Invoice Capture.
Okay. So technically, it's possible. So we basically, you can integrate the other, not using our default AI builder for the OCR and use the third party. It's possible. Technically, it's possible. Yeah.
Great. So by default, right, we definitely use we bring OCR capabilities for you packaged within Invoice Capture. And if you like to use your own model technical, there is a solution for that. But it's not mandatory to bring your own OCR intelligence.
Yeah, because we are not recommended that is because in the pricing we basically has already been included this AI builder credits. So if you embedded the other OCR service, it means maybe you need to pay additional fees for the other OCR service. That might be a little bit expensive for the customer. Yeah. So yeah.
So another question, I see is, what the question about the dual write, if dual write needs to be configured. And Rain, let me take that question directly. So within our current architecture and design, no dual write is needed. So we're not using dual write to move data from invoice capture into finance or from Dataverse into finance. So we do connect directly, by using OData, by using virtual entity events to get this data transferred. And as mentioned, in future we have a batching framework which helps you to push, those invoices at scale, following the schedule, right? Yeah. So no dual write is needed, and this is the same. Sorry, let me just finish the sentence. So no dual write is needed, and that's the same. If you like to build a model-driven app and you like to have data available in that model-driven app, you can directly use virtual entities to access data sits in finance, so you can CRUD it directly. So we definitely no need for dual write for those samples.
Yes, I think Severin answer is very clear. I just put some additional comments that we are not like using the dual write in our solution, but we do like think some like master data, for example, the legal entity and vendor, such kind of master data using the service to bring them to the invoice capture, because these are the mandatory information to create the invoice in the F&O. So this information will be using not using dual write, but will be synced from the F&O to the invoice capture. Yeah.
Kevin, is there another question you see which we would like to read out loud?
So I know I've seen a few questions around kind of similar topics, so we'll try to kind of capture all the information at once. So I know I saw one that if there's no invoice journal, how are cost invoices posted? I was looking for another question. I know there's been some questions around how invoices handle two-way versus three-way matching. So try to answer this all in one, but what's going to happen is on your invoice capture, everything's going to come in. Right now, it is all vendor invoices. As stated, the invoice journals are not part of the current solution. However, you can configure an expense or procurement category that's mapped based on your what your expense journal would post to for the vendor invoice. So you can post a non-PO vendor invoice with a single expense line map so that your expense can be captured in the general ledger as you would like to see it. In terms of two-way and three-way matching for PO invoices, that's going to be dependent on what your configuration is and what your matching policies are. Once the invoice is read in and all of the data on the invoice is there, and it's got the PO number on the vendor invoice after the invoice capture is imported it into D365, your matching rules in the invoice automation and AP automation within D365 will process and approve or flag those invoices dependent on your configuration and your matching rules. So hopefully that answers a couple of those questions, and I know we've seen some of those kind of topics come up on our last talk as well.
Thanks, and I just see a question which got asked recently, and this is about how long we are storing those images on the Dataverse and in the system. Rain, would you like to comment to that, or should I start and you're adding in case something is missing?
You can start. Yeah, you can.
All right, wonderful. So what is happening that we don't go and delete attachments by ourselves. So that's your data which you own, right? And you decide when it's time to clean, to purge, to archive. What I strongly recommend is that you're taking a detailed look in what are your policies you need to follow in terms of document archival retention periods, and what specific security and policies are required. So really make sure that you do understand how Dataverse and how finance attachment storage is working, and if this is solving your archiving purpose. Next to that one, take a look to the storage consumption you might have. So this is, I think, important when you're talking about, the images we are storing, that you're not, missing a very important detail in your implementation journey. Rain, anything to add here?
It's a very good, yeah. I think I saw a nice question in the chat box regarding about the currency code. So I want to put some comments that for the moment, our recognition service cannot recognize these currency symbols, but by the GA version, we will support this kind of recognize this currency symbol and interpret it into the currency code in our solution. So for the moment, we are derive this currency code based on the vendor setup in the F&O. But in the GA version, we will use the one on the invoice document. Yeah.
Right, Kevin, do you see another question we can take? I think we have a couple of minutes left for 1 to 3 questions.
I'm looking through now.
Okay, I also can go through a common question. For example, for many like a new customer, they are trying to transfer the invoice from the invoice capture to Dynamics 365, and these items is somehow it contains in the invoice lines is stock items. So for the stock items, it means it must be needed to assign the PO and the PO lines. So when you have the stock items assigned on the invoice line, you should be very careful. The corresponding PO and the PO line should also be assigned on the invoice line. Yeah. So this could be avoid the errors during the transfer.
All right. So I think with that, we covered the most common questions in this event. We are going work towards an FHQ. We will go and publish on the learn or /docs space. So stay tuned. So thanks for raising your amazing questions today. Let me know what keeps you busy, what keeps you awake when you're thinking about invoice capture. We're more than happy to understand your feedback and what we need. At the end, I would like really to show you some resources. So there is an amazing blog post which is introducing our automate and accounts payable process vision we are having. There's for sure docs documentation available. So in this docs article, we are adding a FHQ based of this tech talks questions. You find the invoice capture solution on AppSource. So that's a solution you can go and download, and then you're installing it directly into your dedicated Dataverse environment. This is straightforward. Then you need to start the configuration task, which Kevin displayed today. You're more than welcome to join the Yammer group. So this is a very engaged community where we are helping you to figure out the questions you might have. So please go join the Yammer group, which is linked here. There's an assistant tool available, you can use from GitHub that helps you to get this configuration thing, done if you're not experienced with how to deal with Power Platform and how to configure. But this is, I'm assuming you're all super experts here. In addition, because it's similar, right? We added the tech talk and the learn articles for automate vendor invoice processing. So the feature I talked about, how we do accounts payable, payment automation, what about credit and collections, how to get this payment proposals based on a schedule. So this is all covered. We have done that last year. And if you have any further question, if you need help with implementations or any issues you're raising, there's an email address you can connect, and we are super happy to understand, what is needed and to drive it forward. And with that, we'd like to thank you very much for the time you're spending today. And have a wonderful day ahead. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful night wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Severin. I posted a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd like to hear your feedback about today's session and what you'd like to see in future events. We appreciate your participation. As a reminder, the recording for today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within the next coming weeks. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and audience. Thank you for joining us today.